Cheers, queers, happy gay month. Today I wanted to make a video dedicated to Pride, and actually I will be posting a few different bits this month in celebration of Pride, on the topic of Pride and LGBTQ+. Maybe a bit of fun stuff, maybe a bit of informative stuff, perhaps some personal things, but I have actually made a few videos on the topic of sexuality fairly recently, so I'll leave a link to any sort of related videos that I've already made down there in the video description. But this one is going to be less about me and more about the history of Pride. What is it? What does it mean? Why is it a thing? I wanted to get to the grips of all of those questions because even as somebody who attended gay pride since the age of 13, 14 years old and used to go like consecutively every single year, I still didn't have a lot of information on the history behind it, and very recently I wanted to explore that and really start to understand that. And the more I looked, the more I had this feeling in my gut of like, this needs to be shared and talked about more often. I know a lot of platforms are, and I know that more and more people are aware of the history of Pride, but I felt like I could maybe do my own piece to spread the information even further. So kick back and we can sit and soak in the knowledge together. So as I just said, I have attended a lot of gay prides in my childhood, teenagehood and adulthood. I originally come from Brighton, and Brighton is the land of the gays. It's a very gay friendly, LGBTQ plus supportive community, so they always throw a huge parade and they have a little party in a nearby park in Brighton, and it basically got bigger and bigger every year. As it got bigger though, I did feel like every year it was losing its meaning a little bit, and I stopped going to Pride when I felt like the actual reason for the event was sort of blurring between the lines of something fun happening in Brighton that everyone can get drunk to, and a celebration of a community, and the importance of pushing through boundaries that are still there. I think when you look into the history of Pride, like where it came from, how it started, that sort of reinforces how I felt, because I feel as though none of this stuff was really spoken about at any of the parades properly. I know a lot of it is about celebrities coming there to perform, but it would be cool if they could like incorporate the whole reason that they're there into their performance, because I noticed how like my own friends were saying, oh, I'm not going to Pride this year because XYZ is going to be performing and I don't really care for them that much. And then the next year would come and they'd be like, oh, are you going to Pride this year? Did you hear that so-and-so's there and they're performing? And it's like, it's not a festival. It's not a gig. And I like the idea of there being a party to celebrate each other, but then when you throw a party, I think people who just enjoy getting drunk can quite easily take advantage of that. So first things first, the actual word Pride itself is an acronym. It stands for Personal Rights in Defence and Education. And the reason why we have Pride Month in the month of June, and the reason why a lot of Pride events happen around about the end of June, sometimes they might even leak into beginning of July, is because it is an anniversary on the 28th of June 1969. 29th of June is my birthday, so I feel very like privileged to have been born on a significant date of some kind. There was a gay bar in New York called the Stonewall Inn, and in 1969 it was just any other night in this particular gay bar, which can you also bear in mind that they weren't very common, and also they were treated very secretive and usually like underground or like in the basement of a club. Like it wasn't something that was like thrown about in the front of the window, or like, you know, it was something which you kind of had to attend with that conscious choice of being like, I could potentially be putting myself at risk here, but this is who I am, this is my community, this is where I belong. So a lot of people, you know, attended anyway, because there were a lot of police riots and a lot of really tragic stories of these gay bars being completely taken over by a group of policemen to arrest these individuals who are just trying to enjoy themselves, have a good time, like dance with their friends and just live their life and live the way they want to. But police were literally instructed to arrest these people because it was illegal to be gay, and they would find really stupid, silly reasons to arrest people, such as a male wearing a female garment or something like that. Because it happened so often, obviously these gay bars were prepared for this kind of thing, and because it happened so often, they would have a particular kind of like set of instructions to help everyone leave the building as quickly as possible if they needed to, if a riot was happening. For example, a lot of gay bars would maybe flash the lights, like flicker the lights on the dance floor in like the back of the club so that everyone could like run out the back or something like that, or to find a member of the opposite sex to dance with quickly, stop dancing completely and be prepared for someone to walk in and basically assess everybody. Probably some people would take certain items of clothing off as well. But on this one particular evening in the Stonewall Inn in 1969, the gay bar was raided by a group of cops. But something a little bit different happened this time. A nearby group of people who saw the commotion, saw everything going on, decided to fight back. And the crowd just got angrier and angrier and began shouting back at the policemen, demanding for their rights and sticking up for these people that the policemen were attacking, because that's exactly what they would do. They wouldn't just force people out of the building and let them get on their merry way. They would arrest them, take them into their vehicles that were waiting outside of the gay bar. They would bully them, they would hit them, attack. They would push them around, they would do anything they can to make these people feel worthless and intimidated and scared. Like, imagine how it would feel to know that you could be arrested at any minute now and there's nothing you could do about it and you haven't done anything wrong. And because of this moment, because of this crowd fighting back and this massive commotion that just happened in the street in such a short space of time, it got people more and more angry throughout that evening, and it just continued and continued for nights after this particular night on the 28th of June. So a few days after this, people were continuing to riot, and this is why people still talk about how much change and how much of an impact riots do have. And I know there's a lot of controversy and discussion about peaceful protesting versus aggression being used to really make sure something is done about behaviour that people don't believe in and stand by. But it does go to show how something extreme and an act that you would never even think could be possible, such as people attacking policemen, like authority. You know, those people are only to be seen telling us what to do, but the people fighting back and telling them that this isn't right, there needs to be a change, it just kind of snowballed this movement and this discussion as well. I feel like it opened up a lot of discussions in politics and just in people's communities, people's families, friends, about change and what they can do and how they can start implementing little things that make people feel safe and make people feel valid. And as I said earlier, usually there are a lot of procedures which have to take place when stuff like this happened, but the difference with this one is when the lights came off on the dance floor and people began noticing something was happening and people were headed for jumping out of like bathroom windows, like coming out around the back, it was all blocked. Because there were kind of undercover policemen that had sort of got into the bar and structured everything to work in their favor and they knew how it would usually go about, so they would do what they could to block people in and to really like arrest as many people as possible and to harm as many people as possible. In these raids, they would usually line people up who are in these clubs and ID them all, and then take everyone who is wearing female clothing off to the toilets. They would then be physically checked, and if they were to be males wearing female clothing, they would be escorted out of the club and then arrested. But there must have just been something different in the air that night, because everybody in that bar refused to be checked. They refused to show their ID. People refused to be physically searched. Anyone wearing female clothing refused to go into that toilet. And obviously this made the police more angry and more violent, which I think just in turn fueled the crowd, who were getting rowdy anyway and who were fighting back as it was. So if anything, it made them more strong, more powerful, and ready to put up a fight. So as you can probably imagine, all of this stuff happening was just attracting more and more people along the street, and the crowd was getting like bigger and bigger by the minute, to the point where the actual crowd of people fighting for this gay bar was 10, 20, 30 times bigger than the amount of people in the actual gay bar. And there was, I believe, about 200 people in that bar. People were throwing things at police cars, attacking policemen. There were drag queens throwing their handbag, whacking policemen around the head. There were people who were singing and chanting like gay power. A lot of people were holding onto the car, and all of this noise, all of the singing, all of the chanting just carried on for 6 whole days. I also feel like the trans community isn't spoken enough of when it comes to celebrating the LGBTQ plus community. That community itself is specifically why we have Pride today, and it was the transgender community and the people of colour who were the first to apparently be the ones to start this incredible movement, and that's worth celebrating and being thankful for and looking towards with admiration, kind of keeping that close to our hearts in our own choices that we make, in our own actions, to bring about even more positive change and even more action. And on this note, it's probably worth mentioning that Marsha P. Johnson is a really well-known activist in that community, because she was said to be one of, if not the first person to take a stand against these police that snowballed into the incredible protest that it was over the next 6 days outside the Stonewall Inn. It's not definite that she was, but I do still feel like she was definitely an icon, regardless of the specifics and exactly what happened that day. I think everybody had a part to play, and with more and more people that joined that force, it just added more power. There's actually a story a lot of people talk about on that night where Marsha supposedly threw a shot glass at a mirror in the burning gay bar, because did I forget to mention that the actual gay bar was set alight by the police? Marsha had apparently thrown a shot glass at the mirror and shouted, "I got my civil rights." And a lot of people call that moment the shot glass that was heard around the world. So following this particular event, they decided to organise a march in the following year on the same date, and they titled it Gay Pride as a pushback on the original shame that was brought to so many people who were in that community. So they wanted to flip that on its head and have this dedicated march to Central Park in New York. And as each year went on, more and more cities adopted this celebration, and they would have their own little marches in different states. And because that Stonewall Inn raid happened in 1969, the 1970s was just this century of like gay pride marches becoming common and normal, and obviously now the whole world has their own ways of celebrating it, and it's obviously now turned into the massive thing it is today. But the Stonewall Inn, which is still a gay bar today, is now a national US monument. And it was actually only on June 2019 when police issued a formal apology for their actions back in 1969. I don't even know what that means, like issued an apology. And why did it take so long? I'm not even sure. But that's an interesting fact. That was only 2019. Speaking of, homosexuality itself was only legalized in 1967. And obviously not forgetting, only in 2013, we legalized gay marriage in a lot of places. That's still an ongoing issue, but small steps. That event itself also inspired Europe's biggest LGBTQ+ plus charity called Stonewall, if you've ever heard of that, and has basically continued to provide people in the community equal rights. There's been progress, but there is still so much that needs to be done. For example, I don't know how many people are aware that conversion therapy is still completely legal, which is basically when people take the gay out of them or something stupid like that. Some really intense and damaging practice. Some places even do things like exorcisms, violent acts to those who no longer want to be gay, who believe that it is a choice and it can be taken out of them. Or a lot of people are taken there by family or because of their religion, and it's really sad, but I think there's a lot that's still to be done for sure. But it's really important to look back at all of these dates and our history to work out what we still can do and how certain things have changed and what worked, and how we can use that to sort of fuel our fire for what we need to do today still. And what I really like as well is how there's been over 50 years of Pride celebrations at this point, and with each year there's more ways to celebrate available to everyone to kind of tend to whatever people are comfortable with doing, because obviously some people aren't out yet, or some people don't believe in attending a party like a rave or even like parades. Some people don't believe in. I think there's something for everyone now, so conferences and places that you can meet like-minded people and have important conversations with other people. You can protest in different areas around this time of year. There's proms, pride proms, and there's organizations being brought forward for those who need it, and there being more of a support system being encouraged for those who originally were shunned away or made to feel ashamed of who they are. Soon after this event in 1969, Marsha became a member of the Gay Liberation Front and was also one of the trailblazers who took part in the very first Pride rally that happened the year after. Interestingly though, in 1973, apparently she was barred from attending any future Pride parades by the gay and lesbian administrative community. Drag queens were still very much discriminated against, despite all of the positive change that Marsha was trying to bring to the community. Regardless, in true Marsha style, she continued to attend anyway. That wasn't going to stop her, obviously. If you can't go to a march, it's going to make you want to go even more, really, isn't it? I think a lot of people probably saw Marsha as a bit of a mother in the community, particularly because she had even opened her own shelter for people in the LGBT community who needed a safe space to live, those who lived on the streets or those who were struggling to find some housing, because once again you've got to remember that if people don't agree with your lifestyle, if people are homophobic, landlords can make it very hard for you to find a home. Or even housing agencies, and they face a lot of rejection. So people like Marsha, who can provide safe spaces, is definitely a breath of fresh air and a light for so many people. Marsha kind of made it her mission to care for young people, trans women, young drag queens, etc., who were kind of lacking security and acceptance in their family. She was basically renowned in this area at this point, and she was sort of known as Mayor of Christopher Street. She was also an AIDS activist in the 1980s. There's obviously a lot to her story. I could probably make a whole video on this individual, and maybe I will if you guys are interested in it, but there's actually quite a sad, tragic ending to her story, because she was actually found dead one year shortly after a pride parade. A lot of people speculated it to be suicide, as her body was found in a river. However, a lot of people close to her pushed to have the case reopened so it could be investigated further, because they really didn't believe it was, and they believe it was probably an attack. All of the stuff that she worked towards was funded by a lot of her sex work, which obviously made her take part in quite dangerous situations and vulnerable situations too. So it was never really concluded, which hurts my heart to say, but her story will continue on, and people will continue making really bold and powerful moves because of her, and I feel like that's exactly what she would have wanted. So that is all I will share with you guys today. If you wanna see me talk about similar sort of topics on this, dive into the history of Pride and other kind of areas that cover the community and areas that you believe isn't spoken about enough, please leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to discuss anything that I've spoken about today. If there's anything you feel like I've missed out, or if you feel like there's anything I can add in another video. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this kind of video, do give it a like so I know, because I always look at the thumbs up ratio, and subscribe to my channel to be notified every time I make a brand new video. I'm on social media such as Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. I have a tarot reading Instagram and a tarot reading Facebook group if you want to book a tarot reading with me. Have a lovely rest of your day, week, and loads of love from my house to yours. Bye.